Hi everybody, this is Miss Irene from the library, and I'm here with my friend from the library,
Tammy.
and we are going to have an awesome time today discussing the extraordinary life of Sam Howell.
The Extraordinary Book.
Yes.
Of Robert Dugoni. I thought this was a great book.
Excellent book.
So
I'm going to have Tammy tell us a little bit about the author.
So Robert Dugoni, of course, has a bunch of different genre from this. This is a departure from what he normally does.
Absolutely.
He usually has the mystery writer, the excitement, that type of thing. This was written, he said it was one of the first books he wrote. He wrote it like 10 years before it actually was published. And he kind of had an idea of what he wanted to do about it. But his brother was a Down syndrome kid. And they went through a lot of angst with that growing up and all of the different prejudices that they went through. And yeah, so he said he was looking for a way of writing the story without getting too close to home. And he read about having this boy that had ocular albinism, and that was something that he'd never even heard of, didn't know it existed. But he was not allowed to go into Catholic school because he had red eyes, and the kids were calling him Devil Child. And he said, that's all he needed to see. He saw that, and he said, well, there, I've got my book. So he said he wrote it out in about 6 weeks, and it was really, really good.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This book was just an overall overview for me. If I was giving it a rating, I'd give it a solid 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I'm kind of a tough rater, too, so it's a pretty good score. I thought the character development in the book was excellent. I thought he had amazing characters, and it really brought the book together. The whole book to me was almost like a family saga, but almost more around friendships than family.
Absolutely.
And that's what I really liked about the book. The only thing that I would say I didn't care for as much was his writing style. It's a lot like we discussed James Patterson, where he has very short chapters, and sometimes things can be very abruptly cut off. But I did overall, I would recommend this book to anybody.
I don't know. I do agree that a lot of the chapters were really short. However, when you're dealing with a tough subject, and this guy has a lot of bad things happen to him in his life. If you read a chapter and it just goes on and on and on in the same chapter,
That's true.
It gives you a chance to break it up a little bit. So it's not as bad. And so I didn't mind that so much. So
What rating would you give it?
I'd give it a 4.5.
Okay,
Only
fair
because
enough.
I just loved how he had so many characters, and every one of them had a flaw of some sort, and he gave them an assignment, almost like to how the different relationships that they had determined on how well they handled it, and then some of them went really, really well, and some of them went terribly, terribly wrong, and I thought it was great.
And that's life. It was
Right.
real life, so you could relate to the book because that's what happens in real life.
Exactly.
Our first question is, Dad thought Mom made it worse for Sam by going to the news. What do you think? So if you haven't read the book yet, we are doing spoilers, so just be aware. But basically, Mom was told that he did not get accepted into OLM, which was a Catholic school, and she basically went behind their backs, went to the news, and pretty much forced them to take him into Catholic school.
I forced him out. OLM stands for Our Lady of Mercy. Mother Mary runs very prominently through this book. She was devoutly Catholic, and the fact that the son who had this odd thing happen to him, she considered extraordinary, and she thought that it was a gift from God. And the fact that the church was not going to allow him to go to the school that she had dreamed of him going to, made her fight for it. Now, did that make it rough on him? Absolutely it did. Because it was not a good way to spend your first day in school when you've got news over there, and you're basically showing the principal of the school that it was just a really bad situation, and it set him up for hard times.
He would have been, we kind of talked about, well, what if he went to public school? I think he would have been given a hard time there as well, because unfortunately, this is set back in the 50s, right?
Right.
And that culture would have been, I think, in any of whether public school or Catholic school. But I think it made it even harder on his mother because it meant so much to her that he should go to Catholic school.
Oh, I think if you were different at all, I mean, it was a segregational society. I mean,
Absolutely.
You were going to be, if you weren't the double son, you were going to be something else. Most of the, race, they had a racial slur for just about everybody.
Absolutely.
And it was common. I mean, kids called each other the same thing. It was just the way it was. So, I mean, it was a tough time anyway. But then to be double boy, I mean, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and to just, be on the playground, nobody would play with him. They wouldn't talk to him. So even if they weren't literally being a bully to him, he was always experiencing it because he was not included. And that was really hard. I mean, this is a poor little kid. He's in kindergarten. I imagine my kids going to school, and they got their little lunch box. And, I almost cried the first day I dropped my little one off at kindergarten. And then if I found out that he was alone at recess, but he wouldn't tell his parents either.
Here's the thing that bothered me about it was the kid was brilliant. And they would assume that just because he had red eyes, that obviously there was something wrong with him, that he would never be able to make it in society. So there was no point of even educating him. And the guy ends up being a doctor, and he ends up, just having this amazing, life later on. Largely because his mom didn't give up on him.
Absolutely. He had a great system with his mom. All right, our second question, I'm going to let you take.
Who is your favorite character and why? Okay, so my favorite character, I like the mom. I really like the mom because the fact that she never lost faith once in all of this. She was the one that kind of picked him up by the straps every time that he wanted to give up, and she was the one that kind of made it where he really felt obligated almost to do his best because she continued it on. I also like Mickey. I mean, there are a lot of great characters, but I think she would have to be the number one favorite.
I love the mom, but I liked Mickey best. She was one of the best friends. She grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. She was, her mom was an alcoholic. She basically was raising her younger brothers and sisters, and she was taking care of everything. But in school, she was ostracized as well because nobody wanted to be around poverty, and they basically considered her, for lack of a better term, white trash. Right. And that's how she was treated. And she also wanted to go on to college and to make something and better of herself. And I think that came from her time that she spent with Sam. I think he was kind of like, I'm going to college, grades are important, and they became important to his friends as well because he set the example.
Well, and she spent a lot of time at Sam's house and a lot of time with his mom. So, see, there's the mom again, another positive influence on another child's life.
In the book, they kind of call her the adopted daughter.
Right.
Because she was there so much and spending time with her.
Even when Sam wasn't, she would hang out just to be with mom.
Absolutely. The other question is who's your least favorite character and why?
So the least favorite for me was Donna. She was the trainee that was over at the pharmacy, and she kind of used and abused Sam. Kind of took, he was kind of naive as a young man, and she kind of he took advantage of him, seriously, because of the fact that he went to a different school, so no one knew who he was. So she could kind of see him on the side and not, get into any kind of hassles with people over at school that knew her. So.
I felt bad with him when it came to his girlfriends or that part of his life because I really detested his girlfriend Ava. She was in the book, and part of the book was she's like, well, I don't want you to have kids anymore, go get a vasectomy. Right. They weren't even married, they weren't really even a super committed relationship.
Well, I think Donna did that to him because he felt like, well, who's going to want me anyway? I'm just going to be, so he accepted
a really poor. And until he found out, he called one night and another guy answered the phone and he knew she was cheating on him.
So, obviously they had David Bateman, who was the town bully, but David Bateman hurt him once, and that was it. I mean, he formed a scab over it, and he was able to continue on. But Donna stuck with him for his whole life.
Yeah, she did. You're right. And David Bateman, you hate him as well. He's the huge bully, and he bullies Sam in his younger life to the point where he gets a brand new bike. He's going along, he finds him, and basically him and his two friends just beat Sam up terrible. Right. it's awful for, you know, as a little kid, you can't go ride your bike because you don't know if somebody's going to be there. And it was supposed to be a fun day because it was the first day he was having basically a play date with his best friend and her neighbor.
First day he was able to leave the neighborhood and go to somebody else's house
Yeah.
and have a great time. And it was, at the end, it was all over.
Yeah, it was terrible. So question 3, do you agree with how Sam's dad handled his coming home drunk?
Okay, so this is like a flash of the future because he's not like a little kid anymore. But now he's in high school. He's graduated. He went out and you know, just lit the light fantastic. And when he came home, he knew that he had to like mow the lawn. He knew that he had obligations that he was going to have to do the next day. And so the father said, "Well, it doesn't matter what you did. He didn't punish him. Didn't do anything for that for coming home, you know, terribly inebriated." But then forced him to go out and just do the things that he was supposed to do anyway.
Very hungover.
Yeah, very.
He was mowing the lawn and throwing
Miserable
up.
day. And I think that was a huge point in his life, and the fact that he learned that, okay, things are going to happen to me. That now this was my mess up. All this time he'd been suffering from other people doing things to him. This time he did it to himself. And it was the first time that he had a chance to like say, okay, all right, so I did this to myself. You play, you pay. And so he went out and he learned that I have to take responsibility for my actions.
Absolutely. I thought his dad did it perfectly, and I think his dad did need to address this with him. Because I think his mom, as much as she loved him, she thought he was extraordinary always. And I think if she was living in this circumstance with him, she would have blamed other people. Oh, well, they pushed you, or peer pressure got you, or this, because there's no way that they would not think that her little boy could possibly do this to himself.
Right, and he was celebrating. I mean, it was a big day. So, I mean, so I deserve that. You know, I mean,
Right.
I deserve to go out and how many people have said that? You know, it doesn't matter. And then they feel terrible.
Absolutely.
You know?
It's you know, you have your choices and you've got to live with it. Thank you for everybody who's joining us. We're excited and we're here. So please stay in touch with us. If you have any questions, you can put a comment in and we'd be happy to answer it. What's our question 4?
Question 4 is, David Bateman bullied Sam when he was young at OLM, Our Lady of Mercy's school, and later he reappears in Sam's life when Sam is an ophthalmologist. How well do you think Sam handled his nemesis? I think he handled it just as badly as he did when he was a kid. First thing he wanted to do was like just not tell anybody. So what ends up happening is Sam is now an ophthalmologist. He has a new patient come in, and she has a retina. Yeah, exactly. Detached retina that looks very suspicious. And it turns out that he finds out that the father of this young girl is the same bully who bullied him as a child, and so he assumes, rightfully so, that that might be instigated by the father. And so how do you handle it? And so he didn't know. He was he wanted to find out. He wanted to do due diligence. At the same time, when the father found out about it, who is now a cop and now in a thing of authority, now he's got this thing. He actually follows him home. And he had been doing wrong again. He'd gone to a bar, he'd had too much to drink, and he was followed by the cop. So in a way, he was at fault too. But at the same time, the cop absolutely positively, took advantage of the situation. And once again, he didn't do anything about it for himself.
I thought he handled it better, in the sense that I think because the young girl was so impacted and he felt like she was being abused, that trumped his insecurities dealing with this bully. So when it came down to it, he did the due diligence of calling the doctor saying, am I just being this way because of what happened to me when I was younger, or do you see what I see? And they basically said they didn't see scrapes on the knees, they didn't see scrapes on the arms, they didn't see anything that would indicate a bike fall. It was definitely more like a blunt force trauma.
So what I thought got out of that was when he was a child and he was beaten up by these kids. And by the way, the thugs, he had 2 henchmen that were with him. That was, in the process of 2. And the reason why they were caught was not because of what Sam had said, but because the two henchmen said, listen, this is not where we're at. We're not out here trying to kill this kid. I mean, let's go maybe, maybe
rough him up a bit,
but yeah, I mean, this guy, he was out to like really hurt him. And so it was the testimony that the two henchmen gave that finally put David out of the school and took care of the problem. But it was also the pastor.
Yes.
The pastor that, because even when they brought it and put him to task, he didn't say anything then. He was just going to let it go. And it was the pastor that knew that something was up, and he was the one that reprimanded the child and the father for letting the child be like that.
Right.
And so whenever it's his turn, I think maybe because of what the pastor had done for him, he knew that he had to do that for the little girl.
I think you're right. And what he did was basically they went into, basically a restraining order type situation. And that he wasn't going to be able to see the little girl anymore. And then unfortunately, the book takes a turn, and the father basically goes ballistic when he's charged with his restraining order papers, and he ends up killing the wife and the child. And so then himself. And himself. And then
something very topical going on today. I mean,
yeah,
we're
absolutely.
seeing this more and more in our society. And
how he, Sam had the best of intentions. He didn't mean to make it escalate like this, but he got a lot of guilt out of it.
He did.
I mean, when he felt that guilty after what happened, he really felt like it was his fault. And I think other people in just similar situations have felt the same way. If you've ever had to deal with somebody who took their own life, that's a very difficult thing. And then to turn around and not to feel the guilt for it, and you shouldn't, but you feel it.
But then, I mean, if you see something, they say something.
Yes.
But at the same time, I mean, if you see something, do you really want to get involved?
Right.
Are you
That's
just
tough.
being exaggerated? Is it really as bad as it looks? I don't know. So it's really, really tough. And that's kind of what he did. And I mean, it's a decision that we all have to make.
Yeah. Is it, sometimes when you step up and do the right thing, we don't always get the answer that we want. But we still need to keep stepping up and doing the right thing because somebody has to.
Right.
Somebody's got to. We're on question 5. Go ahead.
Ernie and Mickey proved to be loyal friends to Sam. What is the thread that bonds the three? I think it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
They were misfits. They didn't really have a clique, so they made their own clique of themselves. And they were completely different in each, but they all supported each other, and it was a wonderful, wonderful relationship.
Ernie was amazing. He was a young black boy that was basically ostracized because he was black.
Yeah.
Later on, they learned he could play athletics. So then they really, he got kind of popular because he had the ability to play athletics. So he was kind of cool. Like we talked about Mickey earlier, she came from the wrong side of tracks. They didn't want anything to do with her. And then Sam, obviously, because he had red eyes. And the three of them were not just friends; they were soulmate friends.
Not only soulmate, I mean, they were very supportive of each other. Each one of them had a weakness. So Sam couldn't play sports very well, but Ernie always made sure to include him. Ernie at the same time was having a little problem. It sounded like maybe he was like
learning disability or something.
Yeah, exactly, something of that nature. And so Sam tutored him. So they supported one another, and because of that, they were both better off, for it. So it was that type of thing. I thought it was a fantastic relationship. And then so, why do those particular friends stand out? Well,
I think they stand out because they're your true friends. They're the ones that are there for you. We were talking earlier, somebody can always call and say, oh, I'm so sorry. But, these are the friends that are going to show up and be there for you at the hard times in your life, no matter what.
Right.
And in this book, you see that, when his dad has a stroke or something happened to his mom later on, Mickey and Ernie were there.
Right.
And the parents of Ernie were there.
And yeah. I love Ernie's parents.
They were amazing.
Yeah, he had a strong set of parents, and they themselves were going against the norm. This was 1960s, 1970s,
right?
And now here's Ernie's dad, and he's trying to start a new company up with computers. He has that.
Right.
He has that ability to do it, and at that time, you think of most folks would be like blue collar jobs. If you're a black family, you would be comfortable with that. Get a good blue collar job, plumber or something like that. But he wanted,
he wanted to be in a white collar position where he was more of a STEM scientist.
Right.
type person.
Right.
Question 6. No stranger to hardship and disappointment, Sam is heartbroken when he loses out on being valedictorian, despite his excellent grades. Do you think his reaction was justified? And was Ernie right to turn it down? So Sam's supposed to get valedictorian. He has the highest GPA. And everybody knows the person who's valedictorian is always the person who's got the highest GPA.
That's right.
In this school, they pick a valedictorian, but in the past, it was always the person who had the highest GPA. Well, this year, they decided they were going to pick Ernie instead.
And, Sam had not besides having the highest GPA, he had also had an extracurricular activity like being the school
newspaper
editor.
Yeah.
He was actually selling some of his sports stories that he was, because he was actually writing the sports stories that was helping
Ernie get scholarships and get looked at by scouts. Absolutely.
And he was selling his pieces to local newspapers. And so he was actually making money. So, I mean, so he deserved in every way
to be the valedictorian. And his reaction was he was really upset about it. Yeah. I mean, so upset about it that he didn't even really want to go and talk to his friend and tell him congratulations because he was upset about it.
And they gave it to Ernie because of the fact that they thought that by Ernie being valedictorian that he would bring other possible athletic, students to the school. And so, that's the worst, reason to, because it all boils down to, and it's sad.
Yeah.
The educational system seems to be, motivated by sports, by sports in,
the scouting of sports.
Right.
And with Ernie, he was black and they were like, well, we want to bring more even black athletes into the school.
Right.
I thought it was right for Ernie to turn it down, and I think he did the right thing. And they actually came down to the house to tell him congratulations and say, we know you truly deserve this honor. So in the end, nobody in the book, it doesn't even tell you who became the valedictorian because it wasn't one of them. They just all went and graduated together and had a good time.
Right.
Pretty much. They got through that together. And I think because Ernie turned it down, I do think it made it less of a blow.
And, when you're in high school, everybody has gone through this. When you're in high school, everything that happens in high school is so, so important. And then a couple of years later, it's like,
doesn't matter.
Does it really matter?
Right.
It's like you had to get your yearbook and everybody has to sign the yearbook. Oh my goodness. And then you're like, who are these people?
Yeah, who am I? All right, our last question of the book is, go ahead.
Did Sam live an extraordinary life as described by the title and his mother in the book? Yeah, absolutely. And it's, when you consider the things that he went through, his dad suffered a terrible, setback. He had a stroke right when he was going to go to Stanford
for college.
He had qualified and was accepted to Stanford, and right as he was supposed to be getting ready to go, his dad has a stroke, and now he can't work, and now there's the pharmacy, and now here's his mom, and what do you do? So he takes a year off of college, and somehow is able to reorganize the pharmacy where he can keep that going, and continue on to school. He eventually becomes a doctor, by himself. He has become a very strong person because of he has taken responsibility for the things that happened in his life.
And even when he made choices, so when it happened that that young daughter was killed and the mother was killed, it was devastating to him, and he really felt like it was his fault. And he ran. And the way he ran, he didn't go to the bottle, he didn't go drinking. He basically went to, what did you call it? It was a Friends of, what's it? Borders?
It was the Doctors Without Borders.
He
didn't call it that, but it was the same type of organization where they had doctors that would go out and volunteer their time to, third world countries to, help folks. And so he's helped thousands of people over the course of 10 years.
To get their sight back and to be able to see, or maybe get their first pair of glasses and everything. And so it was just really amazing to me. I do think he did. He did a lot with his life. In the very end of the book, he meets a young boy when he's over there. And he meets another young boy that has red eyes just like him. And he is taken to wearing brown contacts. And when this little boy came in, he took the contacts off to show him. His name was Fernando. And he never wore the contacts again. And him and Mickey end up adopting Fernando. And it's a great ending. To me, it's a great ending to the story, but it was a little fast.
It went really, really quickly. He kind of like tied up all the strings
In bows.
But it was, to me, it was interesting because each of the little facets, you know, the mother, you know, the father,
Yes.
the little boy, Mickey, all of them, you know, they all had their problems and they all
Overcame.
were resolved.
Yes,
exactly.
absolutely.
And Sam helped with every one of that, you know, every one of those situations.
And his problems of being just the average person and overcoming what he was and loving who he was and feeling self, and that happened with him too.
Right.
And so his friends, Mickey and Ernie, I think helped him get there, and his parents. So it was a very reciprocal nature.
It was, but it took a long time.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
let's
did.
face it, he graduated high school, and 20 years later, he's still working through the baggage of all the things that happened to him. And
Yeah.
it wasn't, it took 20 years before he could finally accept a good relationship, because he finally accepted what happened to himself and his wife, Mickey.
Right.
And we had to do the same thing. She had to accept, you know, that she had to forgive herself. You know, somehow that, you know, you think it's like your fault. Terrible things happen to you, and somehow you turn it around on yourself, where it's like, you know, somehow I caused this, somehow I'm at fault for this, and they had to finally release all that. And it was really, really great the way he did it.
So this was a really good book. I would recommend it. Definitely read it. We've had an awesome time talking with you guys today. Thank you so much for being here. If you're interested in doing a book discussion with us on this book next Tuesday, if you want to do the last slide, Ms. Dana?
Sure.
We have a virtual book club, and it's going to be on the 30th?
Yes, a week from today.
A week from today at 2 p.m., and it will be a Zoom link. So you can either email me at irenenjohnson@colliercountyfl.gov and let me know you're interested, or you can sign up at www.collierlibrary.org/events, and then under the events you look for book discussions on that day and you can sign up. I'm really excited. We already have 7 people signed up, so we would love some more, so definitely join us.
Yeah, this book has been out for a while. It's been out for since 2018, and so I'm thinking probably quite a few people. It may have been a while since you've read it, but you're at least familiar with the book and
Definitely
the
join
questions.
us.
Yeah, and we'd like to hear what you think about it.
Thank you guys very much for spending some time with us.